So this is a continuation of the previous video. We didn't actually finish what we're doing there. So we were talking about variable declaration statements already, and I said we also want to look at assignment statements. Okay, now we'll talk about assignment statement. An assignment statement is used to set or reset the values that are stored within a variable. Okay, that means the variable, like I said in the previous video, I said there are only two ways that you can insert data or you can store data within a variable. That is the memory location that you create. One of the ways is by assignment and the other one is by input. Okay, so but for this video we're talking about assignment statement. Okay, now a statement, already from what we've seen all through the videos we've done in this course, is that a statement is simply a unit of execution. So when we say assignment statement, that means is an instruction to do a certain kind of assignment. Okay, now usually assignment is simply storing data into a variable, and that is what we're seeing here. Okay, now also we also saw that variable name are simply like the label that are given to those variables that we use to make reference to them. Okay, so that means whenever you're storing the data into a variable, you simply need to locate it using the variable name. That means make reference to it using the variable name. Okay, so let's see how an assignment statement is in QBasic as well. Okay, so let's write some simple programs in QBasic, then we'll go over to Java and write them, at the same time write them using the Python programming language. So this is the QBasic environment. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I'll first of all clear my screen. I think I did this in one of the videos we've done already. Then after clearing my screen, the next thing is I will simply declare a variable. So let's just say I declare a variable called a, just like the illustration earlier, as integer. And I told you rather that the a is simply the variable name and it's going to store integers. That is why we say create a dimension called a and it will store integer. That's why we say as integer. Okay, so and I also told you that when we talk about integer will just store only whole numbers, that is numbers without decimal places. Okay, so for me to assign a value to the a, I will simply use an assignment operator. Okay, so when we'll be talking about operator later on, we're going to see different operator, but in this case we're going to be using the assignment operator, and the assignment operator is just this equal to sign. Okay, so but in programming is not equal to, we'll call it assignment. Okay, though there are some programming language that sees it or that use it as equal to, even in QBasic here or in Visual Basic use it as equal to as well. But majority of the languages, especially modern languages, they just use it for assignment. That is to say, setting values into variables. Okay, so for us to set a value, let's say we want to save a value called want to save a value like 5 into the variable a. I will simply say a 5. Okay, so what I simply did here is to assign a value called 5, a value 5 rather, into a. Okay, so if I run this program, okay, we're not really going to see anything except I print something out. Okay, let's just say we print the a. Okay, there's another thing again I want to point out is a case sensitivity. Okay, like you saw I did a. Okay, now there is what we call case sensitivity in language too. Case sensitivity is simply the rules that governs how you use cases within a certain programming language. Remember I always told you that learning programming is just like you're learning language, and every language have its own grammatical structure. Okay, so if for instance in English language, for you to start a sentence, you must start a sentence with a capital letter, that is an uppercase letter. Okay, so it's the same thing when you are learning programming. That means any programming language you're dealing with, you should treat it as if you're learning a language. Okay, and learning a language, you have to put all those rules, okay, in your mind when you are dealing with them. Okay, so there's what we call case sensitivity that tells the program if the letters they're going to be using are supposed to be uppercase and lowercase. Okay, we're going to see more of that in subsequent videos that will come up, but for this case, let's just go with what we have here now. So if I'm to run this program, I simply click on start. Okay, you see that it's simply printed 5 for me. Okay, so if I just maybe change this value, let's say I made it 10, okay, and I said print A. Okay, so if I run this program again, it's simply going to print 10 for me. Okay, so now talking about the values can change, this is the right time to now talk about the changing of the value, because from our definition of variables we saw that the data that are stored within a variable can change their value. Now take for instance, I say in this place we had A as 10. Now I came down here and I say A as 30, and I came down here and I say A as is equal to, let's say, 0. Okay, and I came down here again and I say A is equal to 4. Okay, now at the end of the day, the result I'm going to get is just 4. Now why am I getting 4? Does that mean that A didn't store those other values? Yes, A actually stored the value, but as a result of the execution, A stored 10 in the first place, and when it came to the other line, it stores 30. That means it discarded that 10 that was stored in it to just throw away the 10 and store 30. Then on the other line, A stores 0. That means the 30 that was in it previously was thrown away and it stored 0. Then in the last assignment there, A stored 4. So that is the last time we assign the value to A. So that is why you see that when we run the program, A is printing 4 for us. Okay, now that's an indication now that to tell you that when we talk about a program statements, or when we talk about instructions, now instructions are usually executed in a top down direction. Okay, that means the program simply starts from the top, starts executing your instruction from the top. After this instruction, go to this instruction, go to this, that is the statement. Remember when I say instruction, unit of execution, that is statement. So after this statement, go to this statement. Okay, so the last statement that was executed before we printed the value of A was saying that A should take in 4 as the value within the variable. So that is what we mean when we say the data that a variable stores can change as the program executes. So now let's look at this same program in another programming language. Okay, so I'll simply go over to my NetBeans. Let's see how it is done in Java first. Okay, so in my Java, I'll simply remove this. This is what we did from the previous video where we did the introduction to the environment. Okay, so now if I'm to declare a variable just like what I did there in QBasic, I simply did dimension A as integer. Okay, in QBasic, but in this time in Java, I'm not going to write this whole thing. What I'm simply going to do is just to say int A, and that is all. Okay, now this is one of the things about modern programming. As program advances, there are a lot of things that are made simple. Okay, so most of the modern day programming languages, they are simple in such a way that they don't want you as a programmer to bother about some of the things that are some of the convention that you have to go through before you do some certain things. Okay, also because of a quick results for you to get a better and a fine result quicker when you are writing these instructions, these programs. Okay, so most of the things are not really explicitly stated. Okay, and that is one of the reason again why I always recommend QBasic, because for learning at least some of the things like we've seen, the dimension statement, like in this case of declaring variable as integer. Okay, now if we come to Java here, Java will just say int a. Okay, but actually when we talk about principles of programming, how it works, what the statement means, is still the same thing, because that int a is simply a variable declaration statement, as simple as it is. Okay, so it's simply also creating a variable called a as an integer. Okay, so that is just it in Java. So what I'll simply do, like the illustration that I did with the assignment, I'll simply just say a is equal to a certain value, let's say 30. Okay, now we say a is equal to, let's say, 20. Okay, then we say a, okay, is equal to, let's say, 10. Okay, so if we put these various values for a, we can at the end of the day print a by using our output statement. Remember, our output statement in Java is simply system.out.print or print line. Okay, then we simply put the value of the variable rather that we want to print. Okay, so this is, now there's something I want you to notice in Java. Okay, if you watch what we did in Java and you compare with what we had in QBasic, now apart from the fact that some of the statements are not the same, like these guys are the same even in our QBasic, but a little difference. Now you can see that every line, every statement here in Java are ended with semicolon. Okay, so that is another thing you have to take note of. Remember, I always say when you're learning programming, see it as if you're learning a language, and every language has punctuation, has grammatical structure. So in Java, every line of code or every statement ends with a semicolon. So whenever you do any statement, any line of execution, you should end it with a semicolon, because the semicolon denotes the end of a statement. So it doesn't really matter if I have multiple lines here. If for instance I do this whole thing inside one line, it's possible it's going to run like that, but I just separated it for clarity's sake, so that when you're looking at the program it will be clear to you. But that doesn't mean that if I do everything in a straight line is not correct, because it's actually very, very correct, because these semicolons you're seeing here denotes the end of each statement. Okay, so doing it like this is just for clarity's sake. Okay, so that is just what I want you to take note of, okay, in Java. And as we proceed, these are some of the various little differences that you are going to be seeing between the different languages. Okay, so you just take note of them. And remember, I also said before that this course, Fundamental of Programming, is not about teaching you the best programming language. It's not about teaching you what language is best. Okay, it's all about teaching you the principles of programming. So we should, for now, if you are, especially if you are an absolute beginner, but if you are somebody that is already working, you know the language that you work with. Okay, so but for absolute beginner or someone that wants to really understand programming, the principles of programming, what you just need to know is just to follow the rules, what we are talking about, that is the principles that we're bringing in here and what each of these statements stands for. Okay, so far so good. We've seen attribute statements, we've seen assignment statements, we've seen variable declaration statements and what they are. Okay, how they are written in various languages. Okay, so whenever you even pick up maybe a language that you've not seen before, when you look at it, you should be able to distinguish what a variable declaration statement is and what an assignment statement is and what an attribute statement is. Okay, and you should know their function, what they stand to do, because a statement is simply executing a certain instruction. Okay, so that is just it. So if I run this program in Java, I'll simply run the file, and you're simply going to see that the value of a that will be printed for me will be 10. Okay, as you can see, because that is the last thing that was stored in the variable. That means variable, like we've seen, discards all the values. And as the program is running, remember I also said runs in the top down direction. As the program is running, it is giving the computer a new instruction that, okay, see, I want you to store 30 here, I want you to store 20 here, I want you to store 10 here. So anytime a new value comes in, it discards the old one. Okay, now finally, let's see how this is done in Python. Okay, now like I said earlier, that variable declaration is not really done in Python, but that does not mean that in Python there are no variables. Yes, we also declare variables in Python, but it's not explicitly done in Python. So if I want to do that same thing in Python, let's say this is my Python program now. Okay, I don't really need to say dim a, like we saw in QBasic, as integer. Okay, don't need to say dim a as integer like we saw in QBasic, or I don't need to say int a like we saw in Java. Okay, now Python do what they call implicit variable declaration. Okay, now implicit variable declaration, though it's available in QBasic as well, or it's also available in Visual Basic if you're working with Visual Basic. Now what it simply means is that the variables must not be declared before they are used. Okay, so anytime you want to make use of a variable, you just call the variable and assign something to it. Okay, so let's say if I assign 30, automatically this becomes a variable. Okay, I don't need to explicitly now state that, okay, this variable must be an integer, or must be a float, or must be this. Okay, I don't need to use the dimension keyword as well. Okay, so whenever I just say a, automatically it becomes an integer variable. Now how did it determine the data type? Okay, because in Java we see that we just say int a to denote that is an integer variable, but in a QBasic we saw that we declared as integer to denote the integer variable. But in Python now, how do we determine if the variable is an integer variable or is belonging to another data type? It's simply does not care which particular data type you're using, because immediately you assign a value to a variable in Python, the Python automatically sees that variable based on the kind of value that is assigned to it. Like in this case that we assign 30, automatically Python sees this variable a as an integer variable. Okay, for instance, if I say variable okay, let me do something first. Okay, let's say we want to get the type of that particular variable. I think Python has what we call a default method called type that will tell you the type of the variable. Okay, let's just say type of a. We want to print the type of a. Okay, so you don't need to bother about this. As we proceed, we're going to be talking about things like this. We use the method. Okay, so but for now we just want to use it to explain or maybe show a certain results. Okay, so I'll simply run this program now. Okay, so when I run this program, you see I have the class int. Okay, that is to say that particular variable is an integer variable. Okay, so let's just say I come here and I say a is equal to something like hello, for instance, okay, and I run the program again. Okay, when I run the program again, it's going to tell me A is a string, okay, which is another type of another data type. Okay, like I said, we're going to see data types in later videos. Okay, let's just say I say A is equal to true. Why is this true giving me? Okay, true. Okay, so if I run this program again, okay, you see it's going to give me that A is a boolean. Okay, so in Python you don't need to specify what data type that particular variable is, because any value you assign to it at different points will tell you that this is the type of variable that that variable is. Okay, so let's say at different interval within the program, like I said, the program runs in a top down direction. You're going to see that at this place A is going to be an integer, at this place A is going to be a string, and this place A is going to be a boolean. Okay, so when I run this program, it's going to print three different data type for us. Okay, so that is it about this video. We've seen the variables, we've seen the variable declaration statement in QBasic, we've seen it in Java, we've also seen it in Python. Okay, so we know what variables are, their memory location or their storage locations that are used to store data, and the data that are stored within the variable can change as the program executes. Okay, and we also saw what a variable name is, which is simply a label, okay, that you can use to label the particular variable, so that whenever you want to make reference to it, you can simply make reference through that label, and you get the data that are stored within the variables. Okay, so that is it for today, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I think in the next video what we're going to be discussing, we'll be discussing data type, at the same time discussing input statement in the various languages. Thank you, and God bless you.